So as a kid growing up, one of my memories was this TV programme called Top of the Pops. It was on every Thursday evening, and what they did was that they gave a countdown of all the popular records. And so what I'm going to do today, in the style of Top of the Pops, is to give my top 10 reasons why the so-called People's Pantomime was absolute nonsense. And it was self-evidently nonsense at the time, because you were told it was nonsense at the time. And this really is addressed at normies. So for those of you who are subscribers on my channel, what I would love you to do is to send this to normies and just remind them of what they complied with. Just remind them, because I think for me there's sort of two categories of normie. The first one is the monumentally stupid who still actually believe the People's Pantomime, that there was a deadly that V word, there was a deadly, and yeah, they actually still believe that, or they say that they believe in it. And they'll say stuff like, oh well, you know, my granny died 28 days after a positive, so that it was something real. So that's the first category. The second category is the kind of person that, well, they also had the magic sauce, and what they'll try and do is incorrectly claim that they were deceived, that there was some like really elaborate and sophisticated deception, and you know, they were just tricked. It could have happened to anybody, you know. This trick was like really subtle. And for me, the function of this video is just going to basically show these people that that is not an excuse. It was absolutely obvious at the time what was happening. There was no deception. Yeah, I guess the other thing to say as well is that there are still some NPCs and normies that I encounter who still like give it the big one as if they're smart, when they were actually stupid. They demonstrated their stupidity and their lack of moral backbone and their lack of courage, because they actually went along with this garbage. They actually went along with it, and they're still trying to give it the big one, the superiority complex, still trying to take the piss out of people like us that saw through it, wasn't hard, and didn't go along with the medical experiment. And as I say, the thing is with those guys is that they can keep on denying reality, but they won't be able to deny the consequences of doing that. So, you know, the stuff's in them, that's it, game over. So just for those who you know, were alive at that time, you know, when Top of the Pops was on, this is a little introduction to my top 10 countdown. So in at number 10, new entry, COVID cured the flu. So for years and years and years, we had an annual flu season. But guess what? During the People's Pantomime, the flu mysteriously disappeared. And all the people that had flu now had COVID. So some might say that, oh, that was just a coincidence. For me, I would say, use your brain a little bit here. You were sold a pup. You know, flu's around every winter, apart from the 2 winters when they were pushing the People's Pantomime. And basically what happened was the flu got rebranded as COVID-19. This kind of rebranding happens all the time in industry. So for example, you might have heard of this beer in England called Madri, totally fake, imitation Spanish brewed beer that's not brewed in Spain, it's brewed in England. And rumour has it, all it is the old Carling Black Label recipe relabeled from Carling to Madri. And that's basically what COVID was. It was the flu rebranded. I guess a variation on this theme as well, like we could also say this is number 10, is that Putin cured COVID. That COVID was on the, And then all of a sudden, as the very day Putin invaded Ukraine, then miraculously COVID disappeared. But hey, that's just a coincidence, isn't it? Nothing sinister about that at all, normies. Number 9, act like you've got it. This was the phrase that was used by the British government, and they spent millions of pounds putting it on posters outside bus stops. Act like you've got it. So here we have it, right? We've got a so-called disease that's deadly. We've got a deadly pandemic, and at the same time, the government is asking you to act like you've got it. Two things to say there. First of all, if there really was a deadly pandemic, you wouldn't need to act it out, would you? And then the second thing was, this essentially was what most people went along with, most normies. Their lives are so boring that they needed a bit of excitement. So they did a bit of what they call LARPing. LARPing standing for live action role play. And that's what they did. Let's have a pretend pandemic, and the normies went along with it. Act like you've got it. It's ridiculous. Yeah, for the simple reason that if it was real, you wouldn't need to do any acting, would you? You wouldn't need to act like you've got it. If there was something really deadly there, then there was no need for any LARPing. There was no need to act like you had it. Number 8 was that in March 2020, COVID-19 was removed from the UK government's list of high consequence diseases. So again, they actually told you that this isn't a problem at all, this COVID-19. In fact, I remember Chris Whitty in a conference saying most people won't even know that they've actually had COVID. So, you know, this is again just ridiculous. It was removed from the UK government's list of high consequence infectious diseases in March 2020. So they told you at the time that it was a nothing burger. And Chris Whitty on BBC One prime time actually told that to you, to your face. Dun, 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 dun. In at number 7, we've got a disease so deadly that you needed to be tested to know whether you had it or not. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So this became the PCR tests run at like some crazy cycles of amplification that could pick up anything. So there was this president of Tanzania, John Magufuli. He was all over media because he tested some fruit and some Coca-Cola using a PCR test, and it tested positive for COVID. And that was all in the news at the time. Number 6 was on Good Morning Britain. It was all over the internet as well. What we're talking about here is Matt Hancock's tears. He's just fake tears. I'll show you that now.
Was there reacting it? You're quite emotional by that. Well, it's just, it's been such a tough year for so many people, and there's William Shakespeare putting it so simply for everybody that, we can get on with our lives, and there's still a few months to go. I've still got this worry that we can't blow it now.
Do you think that was good acting? Is there anything more embarrassing than that? Than you falling for that? Watch it again.
Was there reacting it? You're quite emotional by that. Well, it's just, it's been such a tough year for so many people, and there's William Shakespeare putting it so simply for everybody that, you know, we can get on with our lives. And you know, there's still a few months to go. I've still got this worry that we can't blow it now.
It was obvious that they wanted you to take this stuff. You know, the first person to have it, somebody called William Shakespeare. What a joke. But the joke, normies, is on you. So less of the arrogance, a little bit of humility on your part would go down well. Number 5 was another cracker. The old safe and effective that was developed in less than a year. So it was kind of the mystery virus was identified, wasn't it, in so-called, allegedly, in March 2020, and the Chinese sent over the computer program with all the details of the virus, yeah? And then, so that was March 2020. By January 2021, the stuff was it'd been developed, designed, tested in less than a year. So how on earth can somebody tell you with a straight face that they know what the long-term impacts of this thing are going to be and it's safe and effective when it was a novel treatment based on messenger RNA, something that had never really been used before as a vaccine? It was more of a gene therapy injection. They told you. There was also BBC articles that told you that this was new technology, and also that it was being developed much faster than a conventional vaccine. Now, you know, for me, if something's been developed, designed, researched, tested in less than a year, it's obviously illogical to claim that they know what the long run effects are, because the long run is longer than 10 months or whatever it was. The fourth telltale that it was nonsense was the coercion that took place. So coercion, can be two things. It can either be the stick. So, you know, we've got no jab, no job there, for example. Millions of people lost their jobs in Europe and North America because they refused to have the miracle cure injected into their blood veins. Now, and many of those were doctors. So there was the NHS, was it the 100,000? So 100,000 NHS frontline doctors and nurses rejected the magic sauce, and they were prepared to lose their jobs rather than have the magic sauce. So that must have told you something. And then on another basic logic level is, what type of miracle cure does somebody need to be threatened into taking? If there was a deadly disease, you wouldn't need to threaten somebody with having this cure, this miracle cure. They'd want to take it of their own free will, wouldn't you? Which suggests one or both of two things: that there was no pandemic, there was no deadly virus, and then the second one is the safe and effective maybe wasn't so safe and effective, and the doctors and nurses who were implementing the safe and effective already knew that, and they were swerving it themselves. The other thing as well to say about that is it just shows you just the immorality of NHS doctors and nurses. They knew. That's what their behaviour told you. They were happy to swerve the injection themselves. They didn't want it. But at the same time, they were still injecting it, the stuff that they were avoiding, into the arms of our friends and family members, which was utterly disgusting. And then the other side of coercion is bribery. So on a mundane level, I think in some parts of America, people got a free burger and French fries if they had it. Just ridiculous. In Austria, it was even more crazy. You know, you actually, if you had the old Britney Spears, you got to see a prostitute free of charge. That kind of insanity, Normie, it should have told you something about what was going on. So there was no deception. You can't claim that you were deceived. That's bullshit. Breaking into the top three, we've got masks. Masks don't work, and then suddenly they do work. That U-turn. And then again, it was all coercion as well, in that you had to wear it to go into shops. It was all the kind of the Karens, basically making people's lives a misery unless they wore the slave muzzle. On the box too, it actually said that it doesn't protect you against COVID-19. So you were asked to do something that was completely illogical. You were asked to wear something that wasn't going to help you to be protected from that same something. And then there was other stuff, wasn't there, you know, about when you were eating a Scotch egg, you were allowed to take your mask off, or drinking a beer, sat down. You didn't have to wear a mask. But if you went to the toilet, you had to wear a mask. So, you know, COVID only affected people who were standing up and walking, but you were safe if you sat down. Again, normies and NPCs, they just blindly obeyed. They just went along with self-evident nonsense. Why did they do that? They're stupid, incapable of independent thought. They might have good, fast and accurate memories. They might have great qualifications, but fundamentally, they're lacking in morality and they're stupid. They're incapable of critical thinking, which is what true intelligence actually is. Not memorizing and regurgitating a load of stuff and doing well in exams. That is not intelligence. Getting towards the top now. So number 2, they actually told you what the magic sauce was going to do to you at the time. So there was articles about, you know, myocoinciditis, wasn't there? And blood clots, and AstraZeneca actually got withdrawn very, very quickly after it was introduced. And all of these so-called let's call them injections, they all did the same sort of thing. They all instructed the body to produce these spike proteins. So as Dave Cartland says, you know, spike protein from the virus, really, that's bad. But spike protein from the injection, that's good. Just, again, an inability to think independently, make up your own mind, process information, use your own logic. Normies couldn't do that. But you can't say that you were deceived, because that information was out there in the public domain at the time. Number 1, and I remember at the time thinking, this is going to fall down because this is such a big logical fallacy, is, let's summarize it as follows. My raincoat only works if you wear your raincoat. So there was this sort of thing, was you know, the obedient rule followers, they were all like, oh, you're unvaccinated, you're a danger to me. So you'd say to these people, well, do you think the vaccine works then? Oh yeah. So then you'd say, well, why are you worried about me being unvaccinated if you think that the vaccine works? So they would So there was another one. I did a YouTube short about this. You know, that the protected needed to be protected from the unprotected by forcing the unprotected to use the same protection that didn't protect the protected. Just absolutely mind-boggling, you know. But people went along with it again, and there was people with a fundamentally normies with an authoritarian mindset. They were quite happy to have people like me sent off to camps. They would have gone with that. We're talking maybe 20% of the population, I would guess, the real hardcore COVIDians. They bought into this nonsense. They would at the same time insist that the vaccine was effective, but then at the same time also claim that they needed to be protected from us because we didn't have the vaccine. But surely, you know, like if you've had the vaccine and it works, you don't need to worry about what I've had or not had, because the vaccine, anyway, it's just completely bonkers. But I'm still amazed that people don't talk about that, because it is just self-evidently a logical fallacy. So yeah, that's my top 10. I don't normally ask this, but I think this is quite an important video. I want you to really share the hell out of this. Send this to all your normies, because what we've got to get them to do is to publicly repent. We've got to get them to atone for what they did, which was causing enormous harm to innocent third parties, people that lost their jobs, people that lost their careers, people that lost their businesses, young people, some of whom ended up deleting themselves, so to speak, because they had their educations disrupted. You know, we're talking here about A-level students. The A-level exams were cancelled March 2020. And that was another telltale, incidentally. And basically their university entrance was dependent on their mock exams, their predicted grades, because there was no proper exams taking place. So some of the clever kids who kind of dossed around at Christmas time 2019 had got, you know, did what clever kids normally do, which is they didn't do too well, because they knew they were just going to do a bit of revision around May time and just ace it. But so they would like, that's it, that's my life over. And many of them ended up deleting themselves. I know that happened because I was teaching A-level economics at the time, and that happened. And that's on those that went along with this kind of, they went along with the live action role play, and they went along with taking part in the medical experiment. That's on you. Those deaths are on you. Had you not complied, they wouldn't have been able to get away with this kind of pandemic, and life would have returned to normal. But your compliance led to those in third parties being, well, just having their lives destroyed. So shame on you. And that's all I want to say today. So God bless.